All right, this second look at a player in the 2023 NFL Draft is going to be about Rashee Rice. And I'd labeled or titled the video Dangerous for at least three reasons, which I'll get into in a moment. Coming from SMU, he's a guy who had like 90 plus catches this year, 10 touchdowns, made a lot of big plays. There are some, I guess some people would say, glaring issues or possible negatives with him being drafted by your team in the NFL draft if he's drafted too early. If Rashee Rice is drafted in the second round, I think that's possibly too early. It's dangerous to do so because you may not get as much return on that second round investment, especially early. If Rashee Rice is drafted late third round or a comp pick or a fourth round pick by your team, I think that might be the sweet spot. If he's drafted fifth or sixth round for whatever reason, there may be some other issues. He may be, in fact, 6 foot tall and not 6'2" or 6'3", as I actually saw last summer reported initially. He's dangerous during games with his big playability. There's no doubt about that. Very strong at the catch point, makes contested catches, has a ton of contested catches on film from 2022. I mean, go watch Maryland. The Maryland game was incredible. Tulsa and Memphis were the other two games that I thought were his best games. He really dominated Maryland's corners, and Maryland has two draftable guys, and one of whom could possibly be even a late first or early second round pick. And Rashee Rice basically forced those guys to be moved off of him. So he's dangerous in that way. He's dangerous if you pick him too soon and you, quote, waste a draft pick for a year or two. Maybe it takes him time to develop some of the things at the NFL level that certain people claim are lacking or missing from his game. But if you draft him at the right spot, you put him in the right place, meaning, maybe he's your third receiver in 2023 or your fourth receiver that you can use in certain situations, I think it's possible that Rashee Rice has an impact early, a more impact early than a lot of people think. Me personally, I think he's probably best suited for closer to the 90th pick, somewhere in the 75 to 85, 90 range. But I think it's possible there might be a team like Philly or New England who goes and gets this guy because of the athletic ability. I know New England, signed Parker last year, and they've got this situation with Jacoby Myers. I just think that there's going to be a team who may look at grabbing him a little early. Could it be as early as 50? I don't think so. I mean, me personally, I would think 62, 63, 65, somewhere in there. But to be honest with you, that's a little bit of a conjecture and a guess for me. He makes a ton of different types of catches, which I think is important. It's not just catches on outbreaking routes down the sideline, which if you follow me on Twitter, you see I shared some of those. And there's other people who share college all 22 film. So, they'll give you that. So go watch that content. He makes catches on in-breaking routes, across the field, deep over or climb concepts. A couple of his short route concepts, I'll be honest with you, I thought were a little less crisp, a little less sharp. Curl routes, there was physicality, there was definitely aggressiveness and assertiveness at the catch point, especially on third downs. Snag concepts and a couple of drags, I didn't think he ran with the same level of ferociousness for whatever reason. That is actually one of the most intriguing aspects to me, and I think this applies to other guys like Jalen Hyatt as well. Just because he doesn't run certain routes doesn't mean he cannot. It means that's what the offense called for. Now, you could counter and say, well, coach, if he's great at running post routes, certainly the offensive coordinator and the offensive staff is going to put him in that position. Well, they did in Rashee Rice's case in terms of that route, posts, one-on-one back shoulder fades or just go fades down the sideline where he just out jumps people. Whether he's 6'2" or 6 foot, he shows that ability, in my opinion. But there weren't a ton of digs. There weren't a ton of deep curls. I didn't think he ran the underneath drags spectacularly well, but it's certainly not a difficult route to run for someone as athletically talented as him. At 6'2", 6'3", 6 foot, whatever he is, the Senior Bowl, apparently he measured at 6 foot after he'd been measured last year at 6'2", so that's interesting to me. Very strong, good to very good hands. I know there's some questions about drop percentage. Like, I don't know where those percentages come from. I mean, we've got 5 games on him, and we just didn't see that many drops. I think Rashee Rice will be a great selection in that third round area, but it's a dangerous game to be played because he may not be there. If you watch him dominate Maryland in 2022, 11 catches for 193, again with two potential, top 3 round pick corners potentially there, it's difficult to imagine him lasting to like pick 100. But if you watch him struggle with Cincinnati and how physical they were, then you can see it happening. What is he right now? I think he's very talented. I think he best fits in as a 3-4 receiver if you like to rank receivers on a team. But really, that's not how offensive coordinators do it. They look at matchups, they look at where players are effective. And for me, he generally plays on the right in SMU's offense. 96 catches, 10 touchdowns, like you saw in the graphic a moment ago. I thought he had fantastic impact. If you're looking for what he can do well, you go watch the Maryland, Tulsa, and Memphis games. I think two of those are on my huddle. One of them is not. If I remember correct, in those 3 games, he had 33 catches on 42 targets and drew 4 defensive pass interference calls in those 3 games. And I think those teams are generally considered pretty good teams. I mean, Maryland's in the Big Ten, and again, got 2 draftable corners. I think he had 2 touchdowns or 3 in that game. Now, 2 of those games occurred later in the season. The one game that was poor, Cincinnati, 4 catches, 41 yards, a lot of cover 2 corner by the left corner for Cincinnati, which of course we know 2 years ago was Ahmad Gardner. I don't even know the name of who that player is now, but he was quite impressive. Physical with Rice, I thought, often had help over the top. Um, and that's why I say like a cover 2 corner type look. After that game against Cincinnati, though, Rashee Rice went off in the final 5 games of the season. 43 catches, 5 or 6 touchdowns, and I thought that game made him better. I'm not sure if the stats will show it. If you want to go back and look at the stats, that's fine. But I think it was 43 or maybe it was 44 catches in the final 5 games, 5 or 6 touchdowns, 2 games of 2 touchdowns. Really showed how rugged he is. Plays through contact. It's like contact isn't even there for him. He attacks it. There was one touchdown, I think, against Tulsa on like an over concept. Maybe it was a more shallow drag, and he's wide open at like the 15. He gets to like the 7, and there's a DB coming downhill at him, and there's a linebacker who's closing on him from the inside of the field from his right. And he just runs over the DB and scores for a touchdown. He just literally ran over him. It looked like a Pop Warner kid getting run over. He's just incredibly strong for his size and his weight. 205, 210, something like that is what, I think most people have him as. He also makes people miss in shorter space. So I think he's got some of that ability. I disagree with people who say he's just a one-on-one contested catch guy, a straight down the field guy who doesn't have 4.3 speed. There's not as many 4.3 guys as we often think, number one. Number two, he actually does make people miss on intermediate and shorter routes often. If you're a member of my Patreon, you can go check it out for yourself. If you follow me on Twitter, you can see some of that as well. But he won a shit ton of one-on-one balls, particularly against Maryland. He embarrassed those guys. Played extremely well for most of 2022, I thought. Only had one huge catch against Navy, 3 for 74 overall, I think. But didn't get a ton of opportunities. I thought SMU was running the ball often against Navy and was eschewing trying to get the ball to him. The Cincinnati game I mentioned, I think one thing to think about with him is he did improve a lot during his time at SMU. I'm not just talking about statistical improvement, but if you look at film from his junior year to film from his senior year, it's a lot cleaner. I do think his stance is a little classic, old school, I guess. Maybe there's a little bit of tightness to his frame. I think that's possible. I don't know that to be sure, but it does look like in his stance and in some of his routes, there's a little bit more tightness than certain other guys that are the highest level receivers. Where does he get ranked for receivers in the draft? I don't care. He's not wide receiver 2. He's the second wide receiver that I profiled, and that's why I put wide receiver 2 there. Well, that's the main reason. The second reason is to trigger people who only talk about wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, because I reject that talking point. I think it's very banal and surface level and doesn't require much in the way of thought or research. What concerns are there? Well, how tall is he? 6 foot or 6'2" or 6'3"? Don't think he's 6'3", but he's strong. He's strong as hell. Drops, I saw a few. I did. I didn't see a 10 or 11% drop rate. I didn't see that. I mean, it's not a drop if he's between linebackers diving and the ball is thrown 8, 10 inches off the ground and the ball hits off. That's not a drop. That's not a drop. That's a ball thrown, maybe poorly thrown. But in some cases, the only place for the quarterback to put it is in that location that I just described to give Rashee Rice a chance to catch it, whatever that chance is, but give the linebackers or any other defender zero chance to intercept it. That's just the way football is sometimes. Everything doesn't have to be, oh, it was the quarterback's fault or it was a drop. That's not true. That's not accurate. And if that's the way you think about receivers and quarterback play, it's just okay for you to be wrong. His route tree, again, it wasn't the most diverse, but in my opinion, I don't really care about it. He made plays on every type of route that I saw, deeper routes, post routes. Look at the first play against Tulsa, touchdown, middle of the field. Look at the first play, maybe the second play against Navy, 72, 73-yard gain, middle of the field like a post. He's a competitor. He's very athletic. He doesn't look like a 4-3 guy to me, but I don't think there's a whole bunch of those walking around, to be honest with you, who have his skills. I don't know what he'll run in the 40, but I think that'll be important. He certainly can't go in there to the combine and run a slow time. That's not going to help him. I think one thing that, again, I said I think he'd be a great pick mid-late third round. He may not be there, though. There may be a team who recognizes his athleticism and how he fits in their scheme. I had some teams mentioned earlier. Houston would be one. The Eagles would be one. I know that they certainly have receivers there, but they're always looking to, and with all the draft capital that they've acquired over the last couple of years, I think it's a team like that and the offense that they run could use a Rashee Rice. The Ravens, to be honest with you, look like a team that could use this guy. He would be a third or fourth round pick for them. And also the Patriots, just because of how smart they are with using athletes, using guys who have skills. A couple other things to mention. I think he could play outside receiver, and I think he could play in the slot. I think he could be an inside receiver. I think he's a guy who can do a little bit of both. He could end up being just a primary slot guy, maybe because of his size. If it does turn out that he's only 6 foot or 6'1" and a little smaller frame than was originally reported, I think that's a good thing. That Rashee Rice appears to be a guy that can play in either position. I'm not a huge fan of pigeonholing guys, to be honest with you, and saying they can only play here. But in this case, I feel like it's not a stretch to say that Rashee Rice can do both. All right, before we finish up, I would like to just promote something we're doing in my Discord, and this is not just me. And we're doing this for at least two positions, wide receiver and corner, and possibly a third. So we're in a shared document categorizing and creating a database of player evals. So you can see here there's 12 wide receivers, and some of them are shaded in. Those are the players who have completed film watching or at least have extensive notes. So over to the left-hand side, you can't see it off screen. You can see here it says expand, collapse. We open up the dialog button or the plus button, expand it, and we get notes for whatever player has been made notes. I usually put my name and then the game that I watched, but other people just put generic notes, which we'll compile. We're hoping to kind of publish it 3 weeks before the draft, meaning turn it into a PDF and let people just have it for free. But we don't have all of them completed because there's just only so much time to do. The next guy that I intend to do is Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State, because there's such a wide variety of opinions on him. And then Zay Flowers. You can see that both of those columns are pretty much empty. I just wanted to take a moment to promote what we're doing, and if anyone was interested in helping to compile or add thoughts to the database, you're more than welcome to do so. Anyone who joins my Discord, joins my Patreon and Discord, gets access to that shared document and is able to add in their own notes. And we want people who have different opinions. There's a couple of people in there who have said they wouldn't draft Rashee Rice with a 5th or 6th round pick. I have a different opinion because I saw primarily the game against Maryland changed my opinion. I didn't have an incredibly high opinion of him until I watched that one. And then I watched Tulsa and Memphis to confirm what I saw. And I saw a guy with a lot of skills who got better over the course of his career at SMU and who got better in the second half of the season in 2022, particularly after he played against Cincinnati and had some issues. I think the coaches figured out a little bit better usage for him. I don't think this is just a gadget guy to run jet sweeps with, to run screens with. I, in fact, think he's got a hell of a lot more contested catch ability down the sidelines, outside the bottom of the numbers, than some guys who are 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", and by that I do mean Quentin Johnston, who has not won a whole bunch of contested catches, nor has he won a bunch of fades or one-on-one back shoulder fades down near the outside of the field, the sidelines, from the bottom of the numbers to the sidelines, in the midfield area. And also I haven't seen Quentin Johnston win those down in the end zone as well either. And I have seen both of those things from Rashee Rice. So this is my eval for Rashee Rice. Again, I don't think he's the second best wide receiver in this class. He's just the second one that I chose to profile. And the third guy that we're probably going to look at is Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then possibly Zay Flowers after that. Appreciate you guys' time. If you enjoyed this little profile of Rashee Rice from SMU, please let me know in the comments section. If you think other people would enjoy this listening to this video, then please consider sharing a link on social media to help the video get more reach.